Welcome to witchysips, another witchy podcast, but with coffee or tea. Actually, today it's tea in my favorite Bride of Frankenstein cup because I don't know why, I just love this cup. But yeah, so welcome to another episode. Actually, today it's just going to be me. We had the schedule moved around a little bit, and so that was my fault because I forgot to mention that there was another episode after the Audrey episode and before the Halloween episode. So the first one was me, and then it was the Audrey one, and then I thought it was the next Halloween one, but it wasn't. It was this episode, and I totally forgot about that. But that's fine because today we are going to talk about Mercury in retrograde. I know it's been 2 weeks since our last episode. So yeah, since then a lot has gone on. When we did that episode, we had just started Mercury Retrograde, and we didn't really talk about it. So actually, we didn't talk about it at all. So today, I wanted to take an opportunity to mention what's been going on with the podcast and us being in Mercury Retrograde, and it's been nuts. I was in an accident about a month ago, and so we've been car shopping, and car shopping has just been stressful, and part of it I feel has to do with Mercury retrograde, just because big purchases for me in general are very stressful, but car shopping specifically was particularly difficult. It was stressful, and I was in a bad mood, and all the things that could have gone wrong did. But we needed a vehicle immediately, so we had to sign on it, and now we have a vehicle. But there are still little things that have to be worked out, and I believe that's because we are under the influence of Mercury retrograde. But aside from that, there has been communication drama at work. Like I mentioned before, I'm a sign language interpreter, and the platform that we use for work for the specific company that I work with, the platform has been acting pretty wonky, and people have been upset about it, and so there's this drama and all that jazz. I'm just sitting there patiently waiting for it to be fixed. But aside from that, also, witchysips has not been uploaded onto Apple Podcasts. The second episode of witchysips has not yet been posted on iTunes, and I've been emailing back and forth with my RSS feed provider, which is Anchor, and with Apple, with the podcast department, because they don't have an 800 number to call. So I've been emailing back and forth, and it's just been, they've been passing me from one company to the other, Anchor to Apple, Apple to Anchor, and it's just been a mess. And so all this I mentioned because of our topic today, again, Mercury in retrograde, and what that is and how it affects us, and what we can do about it, and how we can manage our lives when it's happening. But so what is Mercury retrograde and what does it do? So Mercury retrograde is because Mercury's orbit around the sun is so much smaller than all the other planets. Technically, it does happen with the other planets, but because Mercury's orbit is so much smaller is the reason that it happens at least 3 to 4 times a year. And so I guess when I was trying to put together the show notes for this episode, I was trying to figure out a simple way to explain Mercury retrograde as it appears in the sky. So think of it like you're running in a track, and one person on the innermost lane is faster than you, and they're going, and so by the time you're going into a corner, they've already gone that corner, and they're already starting to go back around to be behind you. And that's what it looks like for us here on Earth when Mercury goes around the sun, is starting to go around again. And so we see it go one way, and then it goes backwards, and then it goes forward again. And so that backwards period, that's Mercury retrograde. And so during that time, you can think of it as, because Mercury rules or governs any type of communication, any type of travel, any type of formal contracts, business, commerce, that kind of thing. When it's retrograde, it's not nearby and it's not able to supervise all these things that it usually rules over. And so we're talking, like I said, Mercury rules over any type of communication, listening, speaking, reading, editing, researching, negotiating, selling and buying, and that involves commerce under that category as well. Formal contracts, agreements, important documents, leases, wills, so on and so forth, and transportation, shipping, travel, etc. So I don't know if y'all remember, because it deals with communication, right? And a big part of our communication nowadays is through media and through technology. And recently, 2 Mondays ago, the Monday before our second episode of witchysips was released, Instagram went down for the most part of the day, actually. And it reminded me of back in 2019 when it went down for a big part of the day as well. And I want to say, I'm not sure, but I want to say that was during Mercury Retrograde period, or it was the pre-shadow of Mercury Retrograde, which also, all the things that typically happen during Mercury Retrograde also happen in the pre-shadow and post-shadow of Mercury Retrograde. And so, but that's what happened like I said, 2 Mondays ago, when Instagram was down and everybody was on Twitter because Facebook and Instagram were down, and so everybody flocks to Twitter when those two suddenly disappear. But anyway, something that I was reading while I was getting some more information on Mercury Retrograde was that travel for new business is not typically suggested during Mercury Retrograde, but travel for pleasure is something that is more advisable, just because it's your chance to just get away from it all and just kind of sit and relax and be with yourself instead of being in the middle of everything that's going all crazy. There would have to be one of those relaxing vacations though, not like ones where you have an itinerary set for every single day and every single time slot is full, because then you run into the same problems of, I don't know, maybe forgetting a reservation number, or losing your itinerary, or erroneously scheduling a day trip or something like that. One of the things that a specific website suggested to do when we're under the influence of Mercury retrograde is try to figure out which corresponding element the sign is that Mercury retrograde falls under that specific season. So, for example, this Mercury retrograde that just happened was Libra, which is an air sign. The last one was in late May, early June, which is Gemini, which is also an air sign. And so just depending on which sign it falls under and which corresponding element it falls under, there are some guidelines that you can kind of take into consideration when you're going about your days. And so we're just going to get into those right now. If Mercury retrograde lands on a fire sign, and that would be Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius, think of how fire signs are typically very bold and think big. So think that way when you're going and planning and communicating and working during Mercury retrograde. If it's under an earth sign, which is Taurus, Virgo, or Capricorn, then you might want to be practical and be grounded and follow time limits and budget limits and all the limits. Just be grounded and think practically instead of emotionally or too boldly as a fire sign would. If it falls on an air sign, which are Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra, you want to be ready for lots of communication, because these three signs are very communicative because they're air signs. And so be ready for a lot of communication, be ready for a lot of feedback, be ready for a lot of response. Ask people for their feedback, ask people for what their opinions are on certain projects, on certain research, on your work, on any type of thing that you might be planning on. Um, Air signs tend to be very analytical and sometimes a bit too analytical. Like, hello, my overthinkers out there, like myself. I am a Gemini sun and I tend to overthink so much. But during Mercury retrograde, trust that process. Trust that the overthinking and the overanalyzing might be beneficial. And be objective when you make decisions and don't be overly emotional with your decision making. If Mercury retrograde lands under a water sign, make sure you use your intuition and follow your gut and follow that emotional intelligence. Um, in these instances, that can go a long way as opposed to thinking practically or thinking boldly or thinking objectively. Just follow your intuition and follow what feels right. These are things that are suggestions, right? Because again, Mercury retrograde affects people in various ways. It's not the same for everybody. So previously, I hadn't experienced Mercury retrograde the way I did this time around. Um, a few things would come up here and there during previous ones, but this one just kind of took a lot out of me, right? And like in a perfect world, we could be like, wait, hold off. I'm going to hold off on signing on that house, or I'm going to hold off on buying that car, or I'm just going to take a vacation because I don't have to work. But that would be in a perfect world. But we can't just put everything on hold because of Mercury retrograde, right? Because it shows up so often, 3 to 4 times a year. So, what do we do in those instances? This is not to say you should stop doing everything, like I said, right? You should not stop living your life. You should not just go hide under a rock for the 3 weeks that Mercury retrograde affects our lives. But what you can do is double check on your plans, double check your work, make sure, like I said, to get responses, to think boldly, to be grounded, to follow your intuition in respective cases. But also because Mercury is so fluid and it causes plans to maybe go awry, be flexible. Learn to be flexible and learn to think about the what ifs in this case. A lot of times we think, well, what if I had done this? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? And we shouldn't really be too afraid of all these what ifs. But during Mercury retrograde, it might be beneficial. What if I get a flat? Do I have a spare tire? What if my car breaks down the middle of the road? Do I have roadside assistance? What if this email that I sent doesn't get delivered? Do I have a backup? That kind of thing. And just learn to be flexible and go with flow, right? But yeah, even though Mercury retrograde can be annoying and frustrating, and it can be mentally taxing, emotionally taxing, and not just during Mercury retrograde, but the pre-shadow period and the post-shadow period. And even sometimes things just happen and you're mentally taxed, emotionally taxed, and you're just drained and you're just tired. It's always nice to reassess situations instead of going with our first instinct, right? And it's always nice to have opportunities to revisit, redo, reassess, and revise our plans, whatever they may be. It gives us time to pause and proceed with caution. That kind of happened with my partner and I recently because, like I said, we were looking for a new car and we were going to buy one. But then we were like, oh, wait, no, we didn't get the Carfax. So we were like, let's go get the Carfax. We looked it up, found information on it, and then we were ready to go get it, but it had been sold already. So we're like, okay. But that gave us time to reassess, reevaluate, and see where we were so we could maybe get a better deal on another car. And we actually ended up getting a fairly newer vehicle that is better in the long run. But that's Mercury retrograde. And it's widely known because so many people tend to notice patterns and tend to notice what happens during Mercury retrograde season. But like I said, that technically happens with all the other planets as well. I know recently there were a couple of other planets that were retrograde as well. And then on top of that was Mercury's retrograde, which just kind of threw everything for a loop, right? I think we might do another episode on the different planets and their retrogrades. When I was reading up on Mercury retrograde, one of the things that it mentioned was when Venus goes retrograde, do not plan on any cosmetic surgery because, like we mentioned with Mercury retrograde, Venus rules over beauty and aesthetics, and when you get cosmetic surgery, it's to enhance your appearance, right? But if Venus is retrograde, then you don't have that planet to rule over these procedures and these goals and intentions. So there's a possibility of a struggle, or there's possibility of something not turning out the way you expected, or not having your expectations met by the procedure that you would have, or what have you. But yeah, so I think we'll do another episode on the different planets and what they rule over, and what's auspicious under a specific planet, or what's not, or what to be careful with, and that kind of thing. So yeah, that is the end of our discussion for Mercury retrograde, and so I think that was pretty informative. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to message us on witchysips. It's witchy_sips at Instagram, or send us your experiences with Mercury retrograde, or send us questions, or whatever it may be. But for now, that's it for that. But I want to leave off with a psychic tea recipe, just because of the season. We're in October, witchy season. Samhain is coming up, and as we all know, Samhain is when the veil is at its thinnest, and we are more susceptible to getting contacted by our ancestors, our spirits, our spirit guides. And so if we want to enhance that, or to have a better experience with it, we can always make a psychic tea. And so this psychic tea recipe is from this book that I have called Everyday Magic, Ritual Spells and Potions to Live Your Best Life, and it's by Semra Haxerer. It's actually really interesting. So, but this psychic tea is a really good one. It's quite tasty. If you like rose flavor, it's kind of great. I like rose flavor. It's a little bit flowery sometimes it's a little too potent, but if you're not into that, then you can lessen the dosage, I guess. But this makes one pot, and so what you need is a teaspoon of dried rose petals, half a teaspoon of loose jasmine tea, a pinch of dried thyme, a heaped tablespoon of mugwort, but also do not drink this if you're pregnant. Also half a pinch of saffron threads. Not entirely needed, it says, but you can add for like amazingness. And then you also need a pen and notebook. It says, this is a tea to drink at bedtime and then go to sleep with a pen and notebook next to your bed. It works best if you have a specific question, which might be something like, where will I meet my future partner? Or should I change my job? Or what areas of my life do I need to take better care of? When you wake up in the morning or in the middle of the night, close your eyes and try to disconnect from your conscious brain and write down your thoughts, however weird they are. And if the tea works instantly, write down what comes to your mind immediately. So you add these ingredients to a teapot, add boiling water, and then allow it to steep for at least 10 minutes before you drink it. This works well if you're interested in contacting a loved one, or your spirit guides, or ancestors for guidance. It works for that as well. Also, if you do divination through tarot or through pendulum work or through runes, casting stones, or whatever it may be, you can also use this tea. It might be beneficial to get in touch with your energy work. And so that's it for that. Also, I wanted to mention that on Halloween, for our Halloween episode, we're probably going to air it on Saturday, October 30th, or maybe just on Halloween, Sunday, October 31st. So it's not going to be that Wednesday, it's going to be the Saturday or Sunday before. But for that episode, Audrey and I would like to do readings, 3-card tarot readings, really simple. And so what we're going to do is we would like to ask you all to send in your questions. And also, if you wish to remain anonymous, please make a note that you want to remain anonymous. If not, and if you want us to say your name, we can totally do that as well. Just let us know. Or if you just want to say your initial, that's cool too. Depending on how much time we have, we might be doing maybe, I don't know, like 5 or 10. I don't know, it depends. It depends how many we get through or how much we have to talk about one or the other. But we are going to be excited to do that. So I will make a story on Instagram and I will share it to my personal Instagram account, and Audrey will share it to her personal Instagram account. And we will wait to hear from you all, and that should be very exciting. I feel like I also was going to say something else. Oh, yeah. So the whole thing with Apple and Anchor and Spotify, like I said, if you listen on Apple and you haven't been able to listen to the second episode and probably the third one, I'm not sure. But there's always Spotify and there's always YouTube. But like I said, you can follow witchysips at witchy_sips on Instagram, or you can follow me at Dario_Adrian_SG on Instagram. And we are on Spotify and on YouTube for now. Hopefully I get things resolved with Apple so we can be on iTunes again. So far it's only episode 1. So hopefully I get it resolved so we can have episode 2 back on there, and we can have this one, episode 3 on there, and then so on and so forth. Hopefully that works out. We'll see. But for now, it's Spotify and YouTube. And the YouTube channel is witchysips. I think it's witchy_sips also. I'm not sure. It's witchysips anyway. But yeah, follow us on the Instagram or on YouTube or on Spotify. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and we will be in touch on Halloween, and we will be doing your readings for that episode. Thank you so much, and you guys take care. Bye.